Have you ever looked at a map of Australia at night from space? It's a rather startling sight. The bottom right corner glows like a fallen constellation, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. But then your eyes drift north, and nothing. A great, yawning, inky blackness takes over. A void so profound, it's as if someone simply forgot to finish colouring in the country. This isn't just a little bit of emptiness, it's a colossal, continent-sized expanse of dark. Why is it that a nation so vast, so rich in resources, has squashed nearly all its major cities into one cosy corner, leaving the entire top half almost completely devoid of urban life? It's a question that seems almost absurdly simple, yet the answer is anything but. Australia is a country of profound and often baffling contrasts. The south is a land of temperate climates, rolling hills that could almost be mistaken for parts of England or California, and bustling cosmopolitan cities. It's where you find the opera house, the trendy cafes, and the vast majority of Australians. Then there is the north. The north is different. It's wilder, emptier, and hotter than you can possibly imagine. If you want to understand why the north is so empty, you must first understand the weather. And to understand the weather in northern Australia, you need to imagine living inside a very hot, very wet sock. For half the year, anyway. The north doesn't really do seasons like the rest of the world. It has two, the dry and the wet. The dry season is lovely. Warm, sunny days, cool nights. Tourists flock in. Then comes the wet, the build-up, and everything changes. The heat becomes a physical presence, a suffocating blanket of humidity. It clings the moment you step outside. The heat is just the beginning. The wet from November to April brings monsoonal rains of almost biblical proportions. The sky doesn't drizzle. It opens and unleashes a deluge. Rivers that were dusty creek beds a week earlier become raging torrents, flooding roads, cutting off communities, turning the landscape into a vast, steaming swamp. This isn't just inconvenient, it makes large-scale construction and year-round logistics a nightmare. How do you build when for 6 months your site is underwater or so muddy heavy machinery sinks? It's a fundamental challenge that has plagued every attempt to tame the north. Living the wet is an exercise in endurance. The oppressive humidity breeds a tropical lethargy known as going tropo. If the weather doesn't get you, the wildlife will certainly give it a try. Australia is famous for creatures that can kill you. The north seems to hold their annual convention. Let's start with the crocodiles. Freshwater crocs, freshies. Generally grumpy, but mostly harmless. Saltwater crocs, salties. Essentially prehistoric killing machines. Salties can grow to over 20 feet long. They can weigh more than a ton. Found in rivers, found in estuaries, and sometimes, alarmingly, in swimming pools. Going for a swim or a picnic by a riverbank becomes a life or death gamble. But it's not just the giant reptiles. Box jellyfish, so venomous they can kill in minutes. For half the year, during the wet season, swimming is off limits. Snakes, including coastal taipans, spiders, stonefish, look like rocks, but inject excruciating toxin. You quickly learn to look where you're stepping, what you're leaning against, and where you're swimming. This constant, low-level threat adds stress to daily life, unlike the southern suburbs. On top of the fauna, there's the fury of the weather. The northern coast sits in the path of tropical cyclones, hurricanes. Cyclone Tracy flattened Darwin on Christmas Eve. 71 people were killed. Tens of thousands were left homeless. Stricter building codes were imposed. To understand the North's emptiness, you have to look at the South's success. The story of modern Australia begins in 1788, with the arrival of the First Fleet in what is now Sydney. Captain Arthur Phillip had been sent to establish a penal colony, and his choice of location was a masterstroke. Port Jackson was, and honestly still is, one of the finest natural harbours in the world. It was deep, sheltered, and surrounded by land that, while not exactly fertile, was at least manageable. This single geographic advantage gave Sydney an enormous head start. It became the gateway to the new continent, the entry point for convicts, settlers, and supplies. A city grew there because it had to. It was the logistical heart of the entire colonial project. Down south, Melbourne had a different but equally compelling story. But what truly supercharged Melbourne's growth was the discovery of gold in the 1850s. The Victorian gold rush was one of the largest in world history, and it turned Melbourne into a boomtown almost overnight. Money poured in from all over the globe, and the city was built on a grand, lavish scale. The southern cities also benefited from a far more forgiving climate. The temperate weather was perfect for the kind of European-style agriculture the settlers knew how to practice. Railways were built to connect the farms to the ports, and a network of commerce and industry spread across the southeastern corner of the continent. The environment, for the most part, worked with the settlers, not against them. The emptiness of the north isn't for a lack of trying. The history of northern Australia is littered with the ghosts of failed settlements. Ambitious projects were swallowed by the harsh realities of the land. In the 1820s, the British, worried about the French and the Dutch, wanted a presence on the northern coast. They established Fort Dundas on Melville Island. They then built Fort Wellington on the Cobourg Peninsula. These were meant to be the Singapore of the north, grand trading posts to command the sea lanes. But they were disasters from the start. Settlers were racked by disease. They were starved for supplies. They were tormented by heat and isolation. Within a few years, both forts were abandoned. A few years later, another attempt began at Port Essington on the Cobourg Peninsula. That settlement, Victoria, lasted from 1838 to 1849. It had grand stone buildings and a garrison of Royal Marines. They tried to grow gardens, but the soil was poor and insects ate everything. They were plagued by malaria. Dysentery took many, and an overwhelming sense of despair set in. Explorer Ludwig Leichhardt staggered into Victoria in 1845 after an epic journey. The British government cut its losses. Victoria was abandoned to termites and the jungle, a lonely monument to misplaced ambition. Ultimately, big cities grow where the money is. They are engines of commerce, hubs of trade centres of industry. A city needs a robust and diverse economy to sustain it. This has always been the North's Achilles heel. Historically, Australia's economic lifelines have run south and east, not north. The nation's primary trading partners were Great Britain and Europe. From the southern ports of Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, ships laden with wool, wheat, gold would embark for London. The country's economic geography was oriented to that trade route. Agriculture, the traditional bedrock, also struggled. The dream of a northern agricultural paradise recurred, but kept colliding with reality. The soils are often ancient, heavily weathered, nutrient-poor. The dramatic cycle of deluge and drought makes conventional crops incredibly difficult. Massive irrigation projects were proposed, such as the Ord River scheme, but results were mixed and often disappointing. There are successful cattle stations, some as big as small European countries, yet they are sparsely populated enterprises. The North has seen mining booms, gold in the 19th century, iron ore, bauxite, uranium. So, is the North destined to remain forever empty? Or could the 21st century finally be the one where the top end comes into its own? There are compelling arguments that things might be changing. The most significant shift is geopolitical. China, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia. Darwin is closer to Jakarta than it is to Sydney. There is enormous potential for the North to become a gateway for trade, a hub for logistics, and a service centre for the booming economies to its immediate north. With modern technology, new irrigation techniques, and crops better suited to tropical climates, the old dream of a northern food bowl might finally be within reach, though the environmental challenges remain immense. Of course, the old challenges haven't vanished. The climate is still brutally hot and wet. The cyclones still come. The crocodiles are still very much present and accounted for. Harnessing the monsoonal rains to provide a reliable year-round water supply for a major city and its industries would be a monumental feat of engineering. with significant environmental consequences that must be carefully considered. Perhaps the future of the North doesn't lie in building another Sydney or Melbourne. Maybe its value lies in its very emptiness, its wildness, and its unique cultural landscape, shaped by tens of thousands of years of Indigenous heritage.